Your gospel reading this Easter morning is from John. Hear now verses 1 to 18 of chapter 20. Early on the first day of the week, while it was still dark, Mary Magdalene came to the tomb and saw that the stone had been removed from the tomb. So she ran and went to Simon Peter and the other disciple, the one whom Jesus loved, and said to them, "They have taken the Lord out of the tomb, and we don't know where they've laid him." Then Peter and the other disciple set out and went toward the tomb. The two were running together, but the other disciple outran Peter and reached the tomb first. He bent down to look and saw the linen wrappings lying there, but he did not go in. Then Simon Peter came, following him, and went into the tomb. He saw the linen wrappings lying there, and the cloth that had been on Jesus' head, not lying with the linen wrappings, but rolled up in a place by itself. Then the other disciple who reached the tomb first also went in, and he saw and believed, for as yet they did not understand the scripture that he must rise from the dead. Then the disciples returned to their homes, but Mary stood weeping outside the tomb. As she wept, she went over to look into the tomb, and she saw two angels in white, sitting where the body of Jesus had been lying, one at the head and the other at the feet. They said to her, "Woman, why are you weeping?" She said to them, "They've taken away my Lord, and I don't know where they've laid him." When she had said this, she turned around and saw Jesus standing there. But she didn't know it was Jesus. Jesus said to her, "Woman, why are you weeping? Whom are you looking for?" Supposing him to be the gardener, she said to him, "Sir, if you have carried him away, tell me where you have laid him, and I will take him away." Jesus said to her, "Mary." She turned and said to him in Hebrew, "Rabboni," which means teacher. Jesus said to her, "Do not hold on to me, because I have not yet ascended to the Father, but I will go to my brothers and say to them, I'm ascending to my Father and your Father, to my God and your God." Mary Magdalene went and announced to the disciples, "I have seen the Lord." And she told them that he had said these things to her. This is the word of the Lord. Christ is risen. He's risen indeed. That is a truth that we celebrate every year, every Easter, and indeed we celebrate it every single Sunday we gather together. We recognize as the church that every Sunday, every Lord's Day is a small Easter. We meet on Sundays because that is the day the Lord rose again from the dead. It's not the Sabbath day. It's the day he rose, the 8th day. And today we are gathered in this unique way this Easter because we're prevented from meeting together in person. So I said in the Holy Week devotional that in some ways this Easter is a bit of a Holy Saturday celebration. It retains some of the notes of that obscure minor Christian holiday that sits between the cross and the empty tomb. But indeed every Easter is. Whenever we do things as the church, theologians call us the church militant, the church that is between, the church that's trying to do things, as opposed to the church triumphant, the church that is finished, the church at rest, as that old hymn goes. Whenever we do things, we are doing them in between the cross and the empty tomb, in between the time when Jesus did his work that changed history forever, and the time when Jesus will return to complete Jesus' work and bring about the kingdom of heaven into the farthest reaches, wipe every tear from every eye. But
despite that, defiantly, in opposition to the dark forces in the world and the messages and the sense of hopelessness, we stand together this morning to celebrate Easter in a new way, in a creative way, in a virtual way, and like is always the case, these new contexts and new situations bring with them new opportunities. For one thing, very often on Easter, we are expecting an influx of visitors, the creasters, the two-timers, the CEOs, Christmas, Easter only, people who only come to church on Christmas and Easter because they feel like they should, but aren't active in the church corporate. Well, we don't expect as much of that this particular week. We are doing things for us and preserving things and helping those of us who rely on the church every week to still have something to rely on. And what that brings with it is an opportunity to go a little bit deeper into this truth that Jesus Christ is risen. Now that truly is an amazing and miraculous truth all by itself, that Christ was dead and he rose from the dead. People aren't supposed to do that. That's not a normal thing that happens. And to say that somebody did that is truly incredible news. But it's more than that. Because the fact that Jesus rose is good news for us. Jesus' resurrection is a foretaste of our resurrection. And by Jesus demonstrating the power of God and the willingness of God to reverse death, we find the truth that we also will rise from our graves. And so when we celebrate Easter and we talk about the truth that Jesus rose, we have an opportunity also to talk about the truth that we also will rise, that we are a resurrection people, and we hope that we as Christ will rise from our graves and will live forevermore. And that hope, it's not like an idealistic, like cross my fingers, oh boy, I hope so, but the odds aren't good. It's a confident hope. It's a sure hope, because we know it's true because Jesus rose from the dead. And there's an even deeper hope beyond that we dare to plunge into now and in this new way, this special of Easter Sundays. And that's the fact that if we will all rise as Christ rose, it teaches us a truth about death. And that truth affects death everywhere it's found. It affects every kind of death. Literal death, metaphorical death, death of animals and plants and planets. It's this reality that from death comes life. It's kind of like a hexaflexigon of theological truth. Have you seen one of these before? A hexaflexigon is a little piece of paper, and it's like this, and it's an object that looks just like that, and inside the hexaflexigon there's this reality that Jesus rose. But if you look closer at that reality and you begin to kind of play with it, you can see that there is another reality hidden inside. If Jesus rose, we will rise. But wait a second, we can look again. And we can look at that reality and investigate that even more. And there's another reality there, that from death comes life. And so the more we look at deep theological truths, and there is no truth that is deeper or more significant than the theological truth that Jesus rose from the dead, we can find more and more truth and more goodness as we look closely at these realities. Because from death comes life, and it's for that reason that from death comes life, that Jesus rose for you and for me and for all of creation. So, whenever you in your life are experiencing death, whenever you're experiencing loss, whenever there's something that is sick, something that is passing away, death is real. Jesus died, and we recognize that truth on Good Friday, but we also recognize that just like a seed, that's the analogy Jesus used in the Gospels. Just like a seed goes into the ground and it dies, it stops being a seed anymore. From that death comes trees, comes the newness of life. So in the midst of our pandemic, in the midst of our Holy Saturday experience, in the midst of situations of separation, situations of fear, situations of worry, situations of things going away that we have long depended on, and situations of people we know and love getting sick and some of them dying, we boldly proclaim the resurrection as resurrection people who know that from death God can bring new life. From change, God can bring new experiences, and that at the end of all, when all is said and all is done, there will be no more death, and there will be life forevermore. Happy Easter.